The South.
Every day, all day, stream the stories that have you talking near and far.
All right, good morning, everybody. Hey, it's Dan Threlkeld. I am here in our digital studio, and I wanted to talk about some breaking news, at least with reference to Army museums that could affect Fort Sill. So I want to preface this by this is still an evolving situation, but we did feel it was at least big enough for us to kind of talk about it and do some commentary about it based off of some information that we received yesterday. So right now, the Center for Military History is actually over all of the museums on Fort Sill. So there are 3 museums on Fort Sill. You have the Air Defense Artillery Training Support Facility, which is technically not a museum, but it kind of falls under that realm. You have the United States Field Artillery Museum, and then you have the Fort Sill National Historic Landmark. Okay, so yesterday we received some unverified information via a social media post that the Army was considering closing and consolidating a number of museums, and this information came in. The information came in to me, or I saw it on social media. I reached out to the individual that made the post that was basically citing an unnamed Pentagon official, and it was a significant number of museums. I believe 18 total on here, and I'll kind of read this. The Fort Sill National Landmark and Museum was on the list that was on this social media post. So when we got that information, we reached out to the Army, the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs, so OCPA, Army. We also reached out to the Training and Doctoral Command Public Affairs Office. We got an acknowledgement of receipt of our media inquiry, which I'll read to you here, just so you know what we've asked them to respond. They acknowledged receipt. They asked us if we had a deadline, and this was yesterday. Understanding kind of sometimes it takes a little while to vet that information. They said that they were working the information, and they asked if I had a deadline specific to that media inquiry. We told them we had that noon tomorrow, meaning Friday, would be fine. Within about 4 hours of that media inquiry, the Center for Military History, which falls under the Training and Doctrinal Command, actually released an official press release about the museum consolidation and closure plan, which I'll get to here in a minute. It does not name any installations on there, but it's going to have broad ramifications for the museums across the Army. And I'll talk about what we submitted here in a second to the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs, OCPA, and then we'll read what the Center for Military History released within about 4 hours of that media inquiry and the acknowledgement of that media inquiry. So just to kind of bring you up to speed, so yesterday on social media came across a post that was being circulated that said that the Army is preparing to close a large number of its museums with a decision pending. According to this post, a final decision has not been made, but it did identify museums on there and that they would have a period of time before they were consolidated and shut down. On this particular list was 10th Mountain Fort Drum, Harbor Defense of Fort Hamilton, Rock Island Arsenal, Transportation Museum at Fort Eustis, 2 ID and 2 ACR museums at Camp Humphreys, a museum at Vilseck, Germany, the Patton Museum at Fort Knox, 3rd ID Museum at Fort Stewart, the Frontier Army Museum at Fort Leavenworth, Military Intelligence and Huachuca Museums at Fort Huachuca, the White Sands Missile Range Museum, the Lewis Army Museum at JBLM, 4th ID's Museum at Fort Carson, the Cavalry Museum at Fort Riley, 1st Armored Division Museum at Fort Bliss, and then here it lists Fort Sill National Landmark and Museum, the Army Women's Museum at Fort Gregg Adams, and then the 82nd Airborne Museum at Fort Bragg. Now, that's a significant list. So we did our due diligence. We've reached out to OCPA. They've acknowledged. What we asked them was, We asked them, given that Fort Sill is in our primary news area, the possible closure of a museum on Fort Sill is of significant interest to our viewers and local community, and we understand this may be unverified or pre-decisional information, but we wanted to reach out to your office directly to ask. So the two questions that we asked them that ACPA is working on for us is, one, is the Army currently considering closing some or all of these museums that are on the list that I just read? And if so, is there an official statement or plan that will be released in the near future? And we simply said we're committed to accurate and responsible reporting and want to ensure that we represent any developments with appropriate facts. So they quickly acknowledged that in the morning when we submitted that media inquiry, and they're working on that media inquiry, a response right now, and we anticipate probably within the next 24 hours we'll get an official response. Now, fast forward a few hours from that media inquiry, and on the CMH, so Center for Military History, is what controls all of the Army's museums. They fall under Training and Doctrinal Command. If you'll remember, about a month ago, I actually did some commentary on this, and we published a couple news articles on this. The Army published their Army Transformation Initiative based off of Secretary of Defense's guidance for some major adjustments and modifications and consolidation in the Army. One of those was consolidating Training and Doctrine Command and Army Futures Command together into one command, moving them from the East Coast down to where Army Futures Command is in Austin, Texas. That was a significant move that we talked about. I did some commentary on this earlier, saying that the Army is prioritizing long-range precision fires, which are we talked to the Chief of Staff of the Army's office, and they said that Fort Sill would still be the proponent for long-range precision fires, and also the Army is prioritizing counter-UAS. So when we talked commentary on that, we talked about the Chief of Staff of the Army's office said there would be basically a net positive for Fort Sill. Now, this is breaking because if this is significant, at least on the history side. So let me get to the press release from the U.S. Army Center for Military History, or CMH. So this came out yesterday via their Facebook page, their official Facebook page, about 20 hours ago. So a few hours after we submitted our inquiry. It's titled Newsflash: Army Museum set to consolidate and close facilities. I'm going to read this verbatim because I think it's important. In support of the Army transformation and a focus on directing resources toward readiness and lethality, the Center of Military History has begun consolidation and reduction of Army museums, a process that will continue through fiscal year 2029. The Army Museum Enterprise, or AME, will reduce from 41 museum activities at 29 locations to 12 field museums and 4 training support facilities at 12 locations. So let that number sink in for a minute there. There's 41 museums across the Army right now at 29 locations. This press release says they're going to consolidate down to 12 field museums and 4 training support facilities at 12 locations. So they're going to reduce from 41 museum activities to 12, so 16 total museums from 41, and then from 29 locations down to 12 locations. That's the numbers. And you can, if you want to read this yourself, you can go on the the U.S. Army Center of Military History Facebook page, and you can read this. So a substantial drop in military museums. It says in the current AME, so Army Museum Enterprise, a substantial maintenance backlog and insufficient staffing prevent our museums from reaching their fullest potential as educational and historical resources. These challenges also pose significant risk to our ability to care for the Army's priceless artifact collection, which is one of the world's largest. The future Army Museum Enterprise is designed to best support soldier training and public education within our available budget and professional staff. The consolidation consolidation plan ensures the widest possible access to the highest quality museums within available Army resources. Specific closure dates and procedures have not been determined. CMH is committed to maintaining communication with affected local communities and commands and to addressing stakeholder concerns. As soon as a timeline of closures and consolidations of specific museums is set, we will provide the information. So we're expecting at least some information coming back based off of our initial media inquiry to the Army Chief of Public Affairs. We should get back something tomorrow, and once we get that information, we will definitely publish it. Now, I do want to clarify a couple things with reference to the museums. At the very beginning of this, I said Fort Sill technically has 3 museums. There's the Air Defense Artillery Training Support Facility, which is a restricted access facility, not open to the public, but it's used primarily for training. But if you walk inside, it looks like a museum, right? They have the United States Field Artillery Museum, which is open to the public. It has regular business hours. People can visit it. And then they have the Fort Sill National Landmark and Museum, which is the original old post quadrangle built in the 1860s and early 1870s. That is what is listed on the unverified list that we received, that we made the initial inquiry on. So the Fort Sill National Landmark and Museum. It does not, the list that we received that we're trying to vet and we're trying to determine does not list 88 TSF, which actually was just built recently and had the ribbon cutting ceremony within the last year or two. And then the Field Artillery Museum, which also just had an expansion for the officer candidate school classroom and section. So it'll be interesting to see how this flushes out. There's a lot of history. Buffalo Soldiers built OPQ in the old post in the late 1860s, early 1870s. So we'll see how this flushes out. There's a lot of historical artifacts that are kept specific to the original old post quad and the Fort Sill National Historic Landmark. So it'll be interesting to see because all of those homes that are at least on the north side and the east side of the OPQ, those are all occupied quarters that are maintained by Corvius, but they fall within the footprint of the Fort Sill National Landmark and the museum. So we will be sure. This is obviously as a veteran, as a former field artillery officer, this is very near and dear to my heart. I know the community loves the museums. There's a ton of history there. We will be sure to track this. When we get that response back from the Office of the Chief of Public Affairs, we will ensure that we update our story that's getting ready to drop on our website and be posted to social media, and ensure that we give you the most accurate information as we're trying to run it down. Unless there are any questions, I don't see any questions posed on our social media platform. But again, here at KSWO, we're trying to continue to utilize this digital studio to ensure that we provide as timely information as possible and as accurate as possible. All right. I will let everyone go. I appreciate you tuning in. And like I said, we're going to publish a web article on this shortly, and we'll cover a couple pieces on the news as well. And once we get a response back to clarify the exact ramifications and the effects on Fort Sill, specifically with reference to the museum consolidation and closure, we will provide an update accordingly. Thank you.
A holiday travel alert tonight.
You're watching Local News Live.